welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. It's exclusive to the Paranormal UK radio network. I'm your host, Paul Rook, and today, as always, we are joined, as always, by the stupendous Kerry Greenaway and Richard Clements. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, not too bad. How's your week been, Richard?
My week's been all right, actually. It's been sort of like eventful, you know. A few strange things have happened, and this has actually been, although it's not in my possession yet, I've actually purchased a crystal skull from Kerry, and ever since I actually made a decision to purchase it, strange things are starting to happen.
Well, we have the perfect person on to enlighten us all about crystal skulls and how they can, how their energy is so different from other kinds of crystal work that you can do. Is the amazing Joshua Shapiro. Good. Hello, Joshua. How are you?
How did I get to be so amazing? I'm just me.
Well, you are amazing. We're stupendous. Well, you're amazing.
Well, all I know how to do is do the best I can, and hopefully there'll be more people who say that like you're saying that. So I'm doing very well, thank you, and I'm very honored to be on the program again.
Fantastic. So for the listeners that didn't get to hear you before, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into the crystal skulls? Sure.
Well, in the early 80s, I got the spiritual bug, which, I started to have a number of synchronistic experiences. I guess the dog is excited about that in the bed.
I think so. Yeah, that's Harley, the paranormal pooch.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, well, they always know what's going on. So, I didn't think when I started to do this that I would be involved in crystal skulls. But in 1983, I had a friend who had a metaphysical bookstore who was Aries like I am. And it turned out that her son, who passed away, had the same birthday as I did. So I think she was probably a mom in a past life. So we had a really close relationship.
Yeah.
And what happened is she had purchased the first book I wrote called Journeys of an Aquarian Age Networker. And what's significant about that book is that she had put it in her window, and there was a movie made called Joshua Then and Now about Joshua Shapiro, who was an author. And so I saw that movie before I saw the book in her window, and it was kind of like a magical moment. So anyway, I went back to her store one day to see if she needed more copies of this book, and she pulled out a picture of an amethyst crystal skull. And I can't recall the exact moment when all this happened, but during my viewing of that photograph, I started vibrating inside. I called it an inner earthquake, and then I was kind of shocked. About 30 minutes to an hour later, there was a real earthquake, and her store was in San Jose, California. So as everybody knows, California has lots of earthquakes. So then I had an outer earthquake, and the picture was vibrating on the table as we were looking at it. And then at some point before I left, I received a message from the picture, because what I've learned in my let's see how many years, 1983, so that makes it 37 now, 37 plus years of being involved with crystal skulls, is that when the crystal skull is awakened, it has a living consciousness inside of it. So I was having a conversation with the skull through the picture. And the message I remember receiving from it was, we are returning to help humanity to create world peace. So Joshua, now that you know, what are you going to do about it? So it's kind of like telepathically through the picture I was getting that. So I call that day one of being a crystal skull explorer. So I didn't realize what was going to happen to me when I got the message, but it got me curious. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, the art gallery, which had this crystal skull in a vault, they were showing it to some person who I think was claimed to be wealthy, and they were thinking to sell the skull to them. and I was invited to see it. So that was my first time to actually be in the presence of a physical crystal skull. And this crystal skull today is known as Ami, which means friend, and that name was given to it by a former guardian who I was close to, who unfortunately passed away, and then the group of people they sold that skull. And so the current guardian is keeping it private. We have no idea where it is. But when I was in the presence of the skull, what I did is I touched it on the top part of it and with my right hand. And I don't know why I use my right hand because I'm left-handed. But for some reason, the right hand seems to be linked to holding energies of crystal skulls. As you'll hear another story later, I'll tell you, with another skull. And then I felt an energy go up my arm. And then since that time, whenever I think of that skull, I see it floating over my right shoulder. So I guess I made an energetic connection to it. So that's how my experiences with crystal skulls began. And then I had a picture of the skull, and I'm just a sharing person. I'm always looking for the most interesting information out there, and I've learned that what you do is you just share it with people, and if it's something that's controversial, which of course, the idea that crystal skulls can have a positive effect on people, and for some people is controversial, you just put the message out there, and those who are meant to receive it and find value of it will, and those who don't, they don't. And I just keep doing that. Okay. So that's how I started.
Excellent. That's quite interesting. So is that the only skull that you've had a connection with? Or is it like every crystal skull that you've come in contact, you've got a certain message from it?
Well, no, I would say that there are certain skulls that I have a stronger connection with. Not all of them. Okay. Like the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, which used to be in England for a period of time, I've had a strong connection with, which is very human-like. The one you have in your museum on Russell Street in London, which is on display now, had some interesting experiences with that one. And of course, we have 30 personal crystal skulls. So most people know my 10-pound smoky quartz made by a Brazilian carver called Portal de Luz, which is Portal of Light in English. That one is my constant companion and calls me Dad. And even if he's not around me, he'll talk to me telepathically. Like he may send me some messages while I'm talking to you three about something he wants me to share on behalf of the family of crystal skulls. So.
Okay, so where do you think the communication is coming from? Is it sort of like, I know Kerry's into crystals, not obviously the skulls, but just general crystals. She would pick up vibrations and stuff through the crystals. So do you think the messages that you're getting are either from the actual crystal, like the crystal vibrations, or do you think they're from, I don't know, somewhere else in the cosmos that are being focused in the skull and then passed on to you?
I think there's a living consciousness that works through the crystal skulls, because a lot of times when I'm dealing with, especially our personal ones, it's like I'm talking to a person. So it has to be a living being. But I can only speak for quartz crystal. I'm not an expert on all the gemstones because the carvers now are making them from every gemstone you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But with quartz is a transmitter and receiver of a multitude of vibrational frequencies. And my sensing is, and this either comes from soul knowledge of working with skulls in other lifetimes like Lemuria or Atlantis, or through the communication that I'm receiving from the living consciousness that works through the skulls. And I feel the skull has to be activated or awakened before this consciousness can do it. So a lot of people who have crystal skulls and talk to us, or we help them to get their first crystal skull, we talk to them about how to awaken their skull, based on what this consciousness has taught us with the skulls that we have. But there also too is special vibrational frequencies that are being emanated through the skulls themselves, which could just be the crystal that it's made from. because one of the things I feel with the crystal skulls is that they are recording vibrational frequencies of everything around it. So like one time when I got to speak at Microsoft through a friend that worked there in near Seattle and Washington, I told the people who came, of course, Bill Gates didn't show up or any of his officers, but, you know, there were geniuses around me because that's all that Microsoft hires, is I said, you guys work with the modern computers, but maybe the crystal skulls were the ancient computers that ancient civilizations used to store all their wisdom and knowledge, and then had some way either telepathically or through some type of device, which, you know, they probably have such a device, they just aren't telling us. Probably from the galactics, we've received all kinds of advanced technology, I'm sure. But that, you know, the skulls were like computers holding sacred wisdom and knowledge. So this is the other thing I sense, is that even though there is a consciousness working through it, and probably it's because quartz is interdimensional, that also the crystal itself is recording frequencies of energies around it, which a person can also link into if they're open for that. You know, because, you know, some people might look at a crystal skull and go, oh, it's death, doom, and evil. I want nothing to do with it. And the skull wants to send them a healing energy or some special information, but they're totally blocking it by what they believe.
Interesting.
So I hope those answers sounded good, because they
yeah,
sound
absolutely.
good to me.
Where do you think we got the crystal skulls, the quartz ones that you're talking about? Are they going to be man-made, or were they sent through from another dimension, or what do you believe?
Yes, yes, and yes. So let's talk about the 4 different kinds of skulls that we are aware of in the crystal skull community. So obviously we have skulls being made by diamond tip tools by modern carvers. A lot of them are coming out of Brazil and China. So I've worked with carvers from both countries, but of course we have talented carvers all over the world. Eder Oberstein in Germany has some very talented carvers who have made crystal skulls. Where else? There was another country. Oh, Switzerland. I met a person who had done crystal skulls who was very talented. Actually, I needed some repair work on Portal de Luz because, you know, when you travel with them, they get nicks and some challenges. So he was able to smooth him over. And I was a little bit afraid as he started cutting into him. But, you know, these diamond tip tools cut through the quartz like butter. So he knew what he was doing. So everything was good. Then you have what are called old skulls, which we define as being over 100 years in their creation. And then depending on the crystal skull, I guess researcher could be up to 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. The ancient ones seem to captivate most people because they seem to be the most powerful. And like I would say, Mitchell Hedges would be a very ancient skull, over 2,000 years in their creation. May not have any idea how they were created. Some people have speculated on the Mitchell Hedges skull, for example, that it might have been done through the power of the mind or some type of advanced laser to do it. And then there are what are called apported skulls, which just come through mediums and appear out of nowhere. So we actually have one of those. We worked with a medium in Seattle, and he invited us to one of his seances where he was enclosed in a curtain area. And after he came out of his mouth came like about 40 objects that just dropped out of his mouth. And what was funny in this instance was, even though he invited us and said, well, there's some kind of crystal skull council in spirit that wants you to be there. And, you know, I don't know how your audience takes this, but I was in the bathroom one time. You know, you relax when you're in the bathroom. And I just thought it would be funny if a crystal skull came through this person. And that's exactly what happened. So I was kind of seeing the future. So those are the 4 types. Now, the ancient skulls, you know, they could be 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 years old. We don't know. Most likely the ones that came here originally were from, I don't call them extraterrestrials, I call them galactics. We're gifts of the galactics. And so my sensing is These were gifts from the galactics of a sacred tool, because that's what the indigenous people who know about crystal skulls, like the Mayans and Mesoamerican people, call them sacred tools. They were gifts from the gods, gifts from the galactics, as a sacred tool to help us to awaken our inner divinity, to awaken to our soul, our connection with our soul. And so I'm going to go into a story you didn't ask me because it helps to give an example of the comment I want to say. So it's going to talk about the Atlantean crystal ball and how it compares to the energy of the crystal skulls. Okay, because I had a chance to see it. Now, this is the crystal ball Dr. Brown found in supposedly an Atlantean pyramid that's under the water, I guess, near Bimini, which I believe near Bimini and into the Yucatan were colonies of Atlantis. And he was with Jacques Cousteau, and there was a storm, and when there's a storm, it reveals what's on the bottom of the ocean. So he went down and he saw this pyramid, and some kind of light was coming from it, and he found a way to get inside. And he went into a room which had tall chairs, very high, and there were gold hands or gold metallic hands holding a crystal ball. And so he got it. So what I want to do is I want to compare the energy of that crystal ball that he found, which was placed in my hand, and I wasn't expecting this, by the last owner, because that crystal ball has shattered when it was in the presence of two tiny little crystal skulls in Mount Shasta.
Sorry, it shattered, did you say?
Mount Shasta, yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
No problem. I just have too many stories to tell about all this stuff. Okay,
I want to pick them apart, though, as well. So you'll have to excuse me if I interrupt you.
No, it's okay. It won't break my chain of thought. Okay, so what happened is there was a person who somehow was able to get this crystal ball after Dr. Brown passed away. And there was the Florida Keys, which I'd never been to before, which are these little tiny islands, which at any moment, if the water ever gets very high around them, they would disappear completely. I mean, it's a miracle that they exist. There was a spiritual center on one of them, and they invited this man with the crystal ball to come. So what I'm trying to make the point is, when I work with the crystal skulls, they have a certain energy and they feel like they're alive. Mm-hmm. Okay, like, I'm dealing with almost a living being. The crystal ball that Dr. Brown found had a different energy around it. Its energy felt, and by the way, when I was younger and I had to decide what profession that I was going to become, I chose to become a computer person, computer programmer, system analyst. So that's how I know what I'm going to tell you. So when the latest guardian of the ball put it into my hand, which I didn't expect, all we were doing was doing a meditation in a circle, and he would go around each person holding the ball in his hand and do kind of like healing. But then after that ended, for some reason, he just decided to put the crystal ball into my hand. Now, I assume that this happened because I had worked with that crystal ball probably in Atlantis. So somehow, probably the energy of the ball, or I call it programming. It felt like it was programmed by very superior beings or people that are, on a very high level. But it didn't have the living consciousness that I felt like in the skulls. But just like our computers, like, when you log in and the computer recognizes who you are, like, if you have multiple users on your computer, and once it recognizes who you are, it presents to you the things that are for you. This ball somehow had been programmed so it could scan me and my vibrational frequency and then shot back, whatever it shot back. And so I had a vision, which I don't know if it was another lifetime or future. It was with my wife, Katrina, but I saw a child there, and we don't have any children, so I don't know what that was about. And the other thing is it integrated into my hand. I can still feel the energy of the ball right now as I look at my right hand. So this is just a comparison to help with your question, that it's like, maybe other crystals have special energies around it, or it may have like a diva or a nature energy in them. But with the skulls, it seems like, some being is saying, oh, here's a portal that I can work through to have contact with humanity without causing fear and panic. Because even though many of us who are spiritual will go, there's no way in God's infinite universe and heaven that only on the earth is intelligent life and there isn't any intelligent life anywhere else. I mean, that's totally ludicrous. So if there's other beings who are in, let's say, different dimensions than us, and this is the sensing that I get from the skulls, they have the opportunity, because the crystal skull's vibrational frequency works on their dimensions as well, that they can have an interaction or send energy to us from wherever they are, whether they're galactics or dimensional beings or angels or whatever. So I don't know if that answered your question in a long way, but that's just what came to me based upon what you asked me.
Yeah, no worries. So do you think, what happened to the Atlanteans there? If they were given this orb, crystal ball thing that communicates with them?
I think they made the orb.
Right.
When I was holding it, I felt like they created this orb, and it seemed like it was a healing device. However, when Dr. Brown brought it out, the energy was so high it caused havoc when he would bring it out publicly.
May I ask a question? Sorry, Paul, to interrupt.
Yeah, go on.
Right, how big was it?
I don't know. How can I say? It fit in the palm of my hand.
So
the
50,
circumference
60 mil?
I guess we don't use that measurement here in the U.S.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I'm going to guess that's correct.
3 miles long, Kerry.
No, yeah. I'm just thinking of the ethics of removing it from. It was obviously placed there in that underwater. It may not have been underwater initially, but I'm questioning the spiritual ethics of actually removing it from that environment.
Well, I asked the ball since it didn't have a problem with it being removed. Okay. See, the thing we need to understand is, like crystal skulls, there's some of the crystal skulls, like the one in the British Museum, is in prison. Okay, they're not allowing people to have contact with it, and the whole point of these tools is to have an interaction with humanity to help us to remember, our divine essence. I mean, it's like the skulls say to me sometimes, well, once you guys go into the 5D, which is what's really starting to happen now, that's the whole point of all the craziness happening now. It's like we're giving up the old for the new. You won't need us anymore because you'll be in touch with your own divine presence. You'll have back all the knowledge. Like the first time I saw the Mitchell Hedges skull was in Dallas, Texas. And after I had been in the presence of the skull, it did something to me. I was in touch with some higher level of awareness, and everything looked so simple. And it was like I can't even remember where I was, all right? And what my sensing is that this process that we're going through and where we're going to be headed, and I know that total world peace is going to happen by 2037 to 2040, so that's a hint of a future question to ask me how I know that, is that we're going to be at that level, and we're going to have access to, a lot of higher knowledge and information. And it's like being in the presence of some of these skulls. It will take you into that state of being while you're there, because it heightens your frequency and energy. And then also, of course, it may make permanent change too. Like, go ahead.
I think this is what happens when it's science versus spirituality. Because at the end of the day, you can't prove spirituality, but obviously, as a scientific point of view, it's a archaeological artifact at the end of the day, and it should be there for people to admire and try and learn more about. But as you said, it's more of a spiritual artifact, and I think that's why when the skulls are in museums and things. That's why they're not. You can't contact it, touch it, or
Well, work with it. Well, let's look at the one that you have in your museum. Mm-hmm. So they say it's a fake. If it's still in the same place where I saw it, which was several years ago, they're saying this skull is a fake. It was probably made by carvers in Eder Oberstein in Germany, and there's nothing to it. But I think that they say that because there's been strange phenomena that have gone on around that skull. So I'll give you an example of what happened to me the last time I was there. So when I was in England, I stayed with some friends, and they set up for me to do a crystal skull talk. And then we went to the British Museum, because anytime I have a chance to see that skull, I want to honor it. And I had with me Portal de Luz, which is 10 pounds, so it's almost human size. And I think I had 4 small skulls. And so what I noticed is, while I was and the British Museum skull obviously is in a glass case, so you can't touch it or whatever. So I was taking Portal de Luz, from each section, north, south, east, west, going around, sharing the energy of my skull, which was free, with the British Museum skull. And I noticed that Portal de Luz went from a light shade of gray to very ugly, dark shade of gray. So in other words, he was helping the British Museum skull, removing negative energies, which I felt in that corner of the room, if it's still there. It was very dark, and the skull was not happy with its placement. It was like an afterthought. We'll just put it in this corner, and, because they had to. Too many people want to see it. Mm-hmm. Too many people ask about it. They don't understand why it's so popular, because they think there's nothing to that skull. And then the other thing I did, but don't tell anybody about this, because I almost got thrown out of the museum, is the 4 little ones said, we would like for you, so we can help our sister skull. I was feeling kind of a feminine energy with that one. Put us on the top of the glass case in the 4 corners, please. I said, are you crazy? And there was a guard in the room there, a female guard. And I knew that they were going to yell at me if they saw me doing it, but I said, okay, what the heck? I'm an American. What can they do to me? So I did it, but it only lasted for about 20 or 30 seconds. So, but I think it accomplished what it had to do. So, I mean, if your listeners believe that there could be these living consciousness with these skulls, then when I tell you they ask me to do things, I don't argue with them. I just follow what they say. Like sometimes I'm at a lecture and one of them will say, could you please hand me to that person? I need to spend time with that person. So I just do it. Mm-hmm. So
I can attest to that. Yeah, when I've worked with skulls, and I've not obviously had the pleasure of working with as many as you have, but yeah, well, there ain't no arguing. You have to do what they tell you to do. You may as well just get on with it, because they will get you to do it eventually if you don't. Right?
Exactly.
What would happen though if you didn't do what they told you?
They would keep reminding you.
Yeah, and keep going.
And they won't let up. No,
they know. It's like a very insistent person that you're dealing with, and they will go on and on, almost like an autistic situation, and they'll go on and on and on and on.
Like Mrs. Doyle on Father Ted.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Joshua probably hasn't got a clue who you're talking about there. But, yeah.
No, of course not.
What most of our listeners will be familiar with, and you have touched upon it, is the Mitchell Hedges skull, principally here in the UK, because it played a very important part in a TV series many years ago. It was part of the opening credits of Arthur C. Clarke's
Mysterious
World. Yeah. And could you tell us a bit more about that skull, sort of what, when you've actually sort of went to actually view it, or were you lucky enough to handle it and stuff? And what's your overall impression of the skull?
Okay, well, of all the crystal skulls that I've personally seen, this is the one that has affected me the most powerfully. So I'll tell you some other stuff, and then I'll go into one special experience I had. Let's see, I really wasn't allowed to touch it, but you don't need to touch it, because the energy is so powerful around it. So let's see, how can I explain this? Okay, so I need to go to San Francisco, a conference where I saw the skull. Anna Mitchell Hedges was alive at that time. It must have been in the late 1980s. And at the conference, she allowed people to approach her. She was sitting like at a table, and she allowed people to come up to her and approach her and, kind of like be in the presence of the skull for a minute or two. So it was, people could experience the energy. So I went in line and I took my 2 minutes, and because I had worked with this crystal skull before, one of the phenomena, and this is reported in the first book that I work with Nasarino and Bowen, Mystery of the Crystal Skulls Revealed, which is now out of print, they were able to record holographic images inside of this crystal skull when they were allowed to do research with it in Canada in the early 80s. So in my mind, telepathically, I said to the Mitchell Hedges skull, I'm very curious how you can do these holographic images inside of yourself. So it said, okay, watch, and I'll show you how this gets done. So what I saw in my mind's eye, so again, it's one of those experiences that only you have, that nobody else can see what's going on, is I saw like an etheric copy of the skull rise above itself. And then I heard it say, okay, now I want you to, because my gift is I'm sensitive to energy. And what I'm able to do is I'm able to, I don't know how to explain this, I just kind of throw a part of myself out at an object or something, and I can feel something from it. So I threw out my energy to the skull, and it felt like a normal piece of crystal. It wasn't special in any way. So then I understood that it's not the crystal itself that's creating the special energy. It's this whatever level of consciousness that's working through the skull that is creating all the phenomena and producing all the energy and doing all the healing and changing people's lives. So that was a very key aspect of the skull that I learned from it. Then if I move to the experience I had during the Indiana Jones film, I was interviewed by the Sci-Fi Channel, which I don't know if they show that in England or not, but the Sci-Fi Channel did a 2-hour documentary on crystal skulls because of the Indiana Jones film. Yeah. Of course, they didn't show my interview, but I at least got credit for my book and for being a consultant from them. And they didn't show the research that we got to do with the Mitchell Hedges skull using a meridian stress test system, which I believe is pretty popular in Europe. That's where I first encountered it, actually, was when I lived in Holland for a number of years. And so I got to go to Bill Holman as the current guardian of this skull. He inherited from Anna Mitchell Hedges. He was her companion at the end of her life. And so she gave him the skull, and he's been taking it all over the United States and sharing it with people, which is exactly what you should do with such a crystal skull. But anyway, I got to go to his house after the Sci-Fi Channel had left, and first I did an interview with him. I had some young people that helped videotape it, so I have that video somewhere. So this was like right when he was just becoming the new guardian and figuring out what it was that he needed to do with the skull. And so I had 3 of my personal crystal skulls with me. He had the crystal skull on, what do they call it? One of those wooden platforms that rotate. I can't think of the name. Lazy Susan. Yeah. When you get to be 65, you start forgetting the names of things. It's very embarrassing when you have to do these interviews. But usually what happens is the host will say, I'm talking about this. Oh, you're talking about this. And I say, great, thank you for your help. But anyway, he had a Lazy Susan. So I was allowed to turn the skull, but I wasn't allowed to touch it. But I did kiss it on the top of the head for somebody who asked me to do that. But I had 3 of my personal skulls with me. Portal de Luz, 10 pounds, and then I had two smaller ones. One, I think, rose quartz skull and another smoky quartz skull. So I took Portal de Luz and hit his face facing the face of the Mitchell Hedges skull on the side, and I put the other two smaller skulls behind to create like a triangle around it. And then it was on this short table, which Anna Mitchell Hedges had, and I forget where she got this table from, but it was an old table. And I was, like sitting on the ground meditating. So I would describe this session with the skull in two parts. The first part was I got to experience what heaven was like, because the energy in my meditation was totally calm and peaceful. I could have sat there, and I'm an Aries, and I can't sit doing one thing for very long, but I could have sat there for a very long time. I was listening to music on my MP3 player, and I must have been a musician in a past life, because the most powerful meditations I have with crystal skulls is when I play the right music that resonates for me. So I was like skipping through different songs. Okay, that one's done. Let's go to the next one. So it's a really amazing experience. But then in the second part, I felt a presence in the room. And again, I'm feeling the location of the presence. I can't see the presence. I'm not visual. And if I get a vision in my mind, it's always in grayscale, which is very frustrating because I can't see the details. But I see the essence of it. So I felt in the presence in the room behind the skull, and to what I would call my right, up in the air. There was something I've never experienced before in my entire life. I don't know how to describe it other than it was very powerful. It knew everything about me. It probably was a group of beings. They were probably dimensional. So I'm assuming that the Mitchell Hedges skull, in my meditation with the other skulls, it opened up a dimensional door. And all I know is that after I had this being in heaven and then contact with this presence, it put me mostly into the neutral. So in other words, there's not too much that bothers me. I've just learned that you have to accept where other people are. Sometimes because I'm sensitive, I can see mistakes they're making, but I'm not allowed to say anything. So I just have to accept that's the way they are. Or I'll ask, a question. I'm getting some information. Do I have permission to share? But it really put me into the neutral. So basically what I'm saying is the energy of the Mitchell Hedges skull for me is one of healing, and that it has great knowledge, wisdom encoded inside of it. And it knows when a person is sitting with it, who that person is and what spiritual gift are they using so it can communicate with them. So some people may get a vision. Some people may hear a telepathic communication. For me, I hear it in my thinking voice. Like when I read a book, I have to hear the words or I can't understand what I'm reading. And then some people may have dreams later. So it just depends which gift you're working with. It seems to be able to link into you. And it knows what energy to give to help you with the next part of your life. Now, you may go through a cleansing also. So somebody may be in the presence, and then all of a sudden it's pushing out some negativity or confusion, and they'll go, that skull has a bad energy. I didn't feel good around it. But then maybe later on, after a week or two after that energy has been, gotten out of their system, then they're more open to their spiritual. So these are some of my experiences that I've had with this skull, how I can, try to describe it. But it just has a really powerful energy around it. One last thing that's coming to me is when we helped Bill Holman to travel in Washington State, which I think was 2016, there was one presentation he did where I was helping him show his slides, and Portal de Luz was put up in the front. It was too big to be on the table with the skull, so it was on a separate table. And he kept bothering me because he kept saying, if you link into my energy, then you'll be able to link into the energy of the Mitchell Hedges skull. Mm-hmm. So it was like an interesting triangle, but it was like I was feeling the Mitchell Hedges skull through him. So somehow the Mitchell Hedges skull, who knew Portal de Luz because we had been together before for that other experience, It was just sending him all kinds of energy, and then I was getting it through portal, not from the Mitchell Hedges skull, but through my own crystal skull. So this is another thing that people should be doing if they have crystals or special stones or their own crystal skull. They should bring it into the presence of these older skulls, just to receive the frequencies and energies. And you can do it even with a picture of it too.
Oh, that's interesting. Why skulls, do you think? I mean, sort of like quartz and stuff can be fashioned into lots of other sort of objects and stuff, but what do you think is the significance, and they seem to come alive when they're fashioned into a skull?
Well, I would look at our own bone skull to explain that. Obviously, the physical form that we have, somebody created it. Some intelligence, higher intelligence, said for a soul to have a good experience in the physical reality, they need to have a humanoid body form, which is a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. Okay, but in our head, we have a bone skull. Now, I believe that bone skull was designed specifically so it could receive higher vibrational frequencies and knowledge, which eventually will pass through the subconscious into the conscious. It's kind of like a pyramid, a true pyramid. You go a third of the way down in the pyramid and it starts rejuvenating metal, and it has special things that go on at that point. Well, I think it's the same with the shape of the bone skull, that it was specifically designed. It is not like, on a bottle of poison or pirates they use the skull. It's death, doom, and evil. No, it has nothing to do with that. I think that comes from maybe Mesoamerican priests who wanted to convince people that only they could talk to the skulls. And if they tried to work with the skulls, harm could come to them. So, stay away from it. This is dangerous. Only we know how to deal with it. So is that saying then that only the skull in our body is death, doom, and evil? Of course not. So I think then when you take a piece of crystal and you put it into the shape of the skull, it's going to have the same ability. It's going to be a receptacle to receive all kinds of energies and information. And the only difference that I see between a regular crystal and one in the skull is the level of intelligence or consciousness that seems to work through these skulls. It's the same thing like we have. We have our waking consciousness, and our brain is what controls our body. But the spirit is using probably the pineal gland and different glands in order to communicate into the physical form. But still, the brain is encased within the skull is this form that's bringing in this energy and knowledge, which then comes into our brain, which then we can interpret, and then we can use it in our life. So I think it's the form, that form which was created by higher intelligence. If you take crystal, which is already special in working with energy, and put it in its form, it becomes enhanced, and it's an entry point for very advanced intelligences to work with us kind of indirectly, preparing us for, when eventually we know that the galactics are out there, that the governments, especially the U.S. and Germany, have been working with these galactics since the 1930s, that it's not like ancient aliens where they came here and left. They've been here all along. And, so a lot of things are happening. So to me, the crystal skulls is a link to the galactics, maybe was a tool gifted to us to help us with these various things.
Who do you think the galactics are? Are they like the alien greys that everyone seems to be fascinated with, or are they another alien species, lizard people, or?
Well, a galactic to me is anyone who's not from the Earth. Now, They could be positive, they could be neutral, or they could be into control. Now, let's see, how can I phrase this? Because I don't like talking about things that are fearful. Let's just say, who do you think probably empowered the deep state or the cabal and gave them all this stuff? It has to be one form of the galactics that's into control. Okay? And what I've been feeling is that those galactics are being kicked off this planet right now. Okay? By positive galactics. Which would be Pleiadians, Arcturians, ones who are very advanced spiritually. Okay? And the other thing, and I'm starting to admit this now because I figured out who I really am. There was an early UFO contactee writer named George Hunt Williamson, wrote some amazing books in the 1950s. The one in particular I'm thinking about is called Other Tongues, Other Flesh. And I had one opportunity, I think it was in 1983 or 84, where I sent him a letter and he answered, but then he disappeared. He talks about in these books about a certain group of galactics who have incarnated into human form, and he called them the Cosmic Wanderers. And when I started reading about this, I started to cry, and this is in the early 80s, because I realized this is who I am. So I know as a cosmic wanderer that I have guides around me who are galactics. I have guides that are connected to the hollow earth, to the underground cities from Atlantis and Lemuria that still exist. So all these type of beings, I've also felt the presence of Sasquatch, like in Mount Shasta. I can think of one time, I don't know why, I said, over and by those trees there, I'm feeling Sasquatch over there. And when I ask people who I feel Sasquatch energy around, they always tell me, yes, I've had contact with it. So we have all three different types. But there was one thing that I read recently, which I think is very significant, is that the entire universe is watching what's happening right now on our planet, because we're going through a transformation that doesn't happen in very many places. Okay? Like, for example, I believe that normally when a planet is going to upgrade into a higher vibrational frequency, and I believe we're going from third dimensional to fifth dimensional, that planet is very close to that leap. Well, right now we're not that close to that leap because we still have a lot of people that are into 9 to 5. They're listening to the media, which my president calls fake news, which I'm pretty sure he's right. All we have to do is look at how many people they said have died from the virus, which now there are reports coming out, which I haven't been able to research exactly where that says. The CDC says, oh, by the way, we made a mistake. Of the 180,000 people here who died, only 6% were diagnosed properly. So that means 9 or 10,000. So that's why I'm saying there's positive, neutral, and negative galactics. And I think that a lot of the young people are incarnations from other galactic civilizations called star people. Cosmic wanderers seem to be universal chimney sweeps. We go from planet to lift it into the light, so that's probably why I'm here now. I'm getting very excited about the things that are starting to open up that I've been reading about, because I asked Spirit, why we were sitting doing nothing. I said to Spirit, I'm sitting here doing nothing and I have a ton of information to share. Could you please do something? And boom, all of a sudden, right after that, I got invited to be on Coast to Coast, which is one of the biggest radio shows there is for the paranormal in the world. And then after that happened, it's been nonstop, 3, 4, 5 radio shows every month. So, but I also asked, I said, I want to understand what's really happening. And I want to know both the positive and the negative. Because if you don't know the negative and the fake news tells you something, it takes your power from you. But if you know that they're lying to you, then you give no credence to it. You just wait to see what President Trump does. Because he's, a lot of people didn't understand him in the beginning, but now I understand that he's playing the role like in the tarot of the fool. You can't really, figure out what he's doing. He's telling you stuff, and some stuff is to throw you off, and some stuff is really so. The next election we have here is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think the whole world's going to be watching that one.
Yeah, well, it's going to affect the whole world too. What happens? We definitely don't want, in my opinion, we do not want Biden. Just too many things are going on, but that's beyond crystal skulls and UFOs. That's
I was going to say we need to keep off the political spectrum, really, please. Little awkward on that one.
right, but everything interconnects. The crystal skulls are connected to everything, and they will help us to create world peace, and are helping us to create world peace.
Yeah, Kerry.
Okay, shut up, Kerry. Whatever. Well, peace. At least I'm going to see it in my lifetime.
Yes, you will. You will. You will.
Which to me is absolutely amazing, because I didn't think I'd ever see that.
Well, let's just say that the horrendous things that are going on behind the scenes, they're talking about that's being fixed, and that, according to what I heard, that's a plan that's been going on for 20 years. So now we're starting to see the fulfillment of it. The virus is a cover to make all of the positive things happen, by the way. I'm convinced of that.
This does point to sort of like they're in all sort of like religious texts and sort of stuff like that. It does always seem to point to there's always a time of tribulation before there's a new awakening.
Exactly.
And this is sort of like through stories through lots of older religions as well. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Right. So it's like well, I don't know if this is because I'm Aries or not, but every situation that comes up, there is a higher purpose for it. So even what we're going through now, it's just temporary. Don't worry about it. It's gonna get over, and the truth will come out, and a lot of people will be shocked. I mean, I've been doing some posts on my Facebook. I think somebody from Europe said, and this was really profound. There's this hydrochloroxide or whatever it is. You guys probably know how to pronounce it. That, of course, has been banned and no attention has been given to it, but President Trump says they can help. So somebody in Europe made a sign said, if they're banning that, then if the masks were really helping us, they would be banning that too.
Yeah, I see something similar to that the other day. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, ask me more questions on crystal skulls and UFOs.
Now, there is a legend, isn't there, of bringing the 13 crystal skulls together and then amazing things happen. What's your opinion on that? What's your take on that?
Well, I obviously must agree in it because I have a novel that I've written called Crystal Skull Chronicles, which needs to be a trilogy, but we only have one of them done. Where 13 crystal skulls actually come together. And according to my story, this happens in Alto Paraíso in Brazil, High Paradise, which is a place I visited, which has an amazing frequency of energy there. They say that there's a lot of crystals under the ground and that you can see a light coming from that area, and a lot of UFOs have come there, and when people go there, they don't want to leave because they feel so happy. And it's the only place I've ever been to where I stepped for a moment into the future, and then I came back. So I don't know how I know that, but I just know that I was in the future 1 second, and then I was back. So to answer your question about the 13 skulls, in my story, and this is what I believe could potentially happen, when they're all gathered together in Alto Paraíso, one in the center surrounded by 12, a very powerful electromagnetic energy shoots out from them and totally covers the planet. And in my story, like people are fighting in a war, the people fighting against each other all of a sudden wake up and say, hey, that's my brother, and they hug each other. So it totally switches the consciousness of people. It's kind of like the 100th monkey effect Ken Keyes wrote about long ago, where they taught the monkeys on some islands how to clean sweet potatoes, and then before you know it, all the monkeys on all the islands knew how to do it. That once a certain threshold of people understand peace and embrace it in humanity, then collectively we do it. So maybe that energy emanated by the 13 skulls could do that. But coming back to what we know from legends, the legend itself comes out of indigenous cultures. Mayans talk about 52 skulls, by the way. So I'm thinking that there may be multiple sets of 13, because 52 is 4 times 13. So they say we have a set of 13, and maybe there's some other cultures that have 13 skulls. Because this 1 in 12, constantly comes up when you start studying things like in Judaism, which I was brought up under. Shapiro is a Jewish name, obviously. We have the Levites, the priests, surrounded by the 12 tribes of Israel. In Christianity, you have the Christ surrounded by the 12 apostles. And they even in He Walked the Americas, which talks about legends from different indigenous cultures, they talk about a Christ-like person who found 12 people in their culture and taught them things. So, and then the other thing too I could think about is I think there are 12 planets in our solar system, that there's possibly one in front of Mercury that we can't see, according to George Hunt Williamson. And, you know, it depends upon whether you call Pluto a planet or not. They keep changing their mind about that there may be 2 other planets beyond Pluto. I don't know, in the asteroid belt that have an elliptical orbit or something. So we have a lot to develop. But anyway, from the legend of the indigenous people, they said that there was a set of 13 crystal skulls, one surrounded by 12. One of the channels in our book, Mystery of the Crystal Skulls, said they had these 13 skulls in Atlantis. And when Atlantis was destroyed, that they were scattered all over the planet. And that obviously the Mayans may have been descendants from the Atlanteans, or that the Mayans received the wisdom and knowledge of the Atlanteans when Atlantis sank. So that's why they may know about these 13 skulls. But it's like an original set. And I think if it existed, it was gifts from the gods or the galactics. They gave us this set. And then all these other skulls we have were kind of modeled after those 13 that we had. So, but the Sci-Fi Channel, when they did their special, which was back in 2008, they were saying, are any of these 13 skulls out? And of course they thought, well, Mitchell Hedges got to be one, probably the amethyst skull I saw me, the British skull. But what I've received is, and again, there's no way to verify this, that none of these skulls have come out. Their vibrational frequency is way, way too high. People could disintegrate in their presence. We're not ready for it. So we have all these other skulls that have come out. And maybe the Mitchell Hedges skull was a copy of one of those. I don't know. But I think that in Atlantis and Lemuria, they may have had these crystal skulls in their temples. And then they were hidden for a period of time, or they're in other dimensions, which is one of my experiences with a blue crystal skull that has not physically manifested, but it's around me all the time.
So what you're saying, do you actually believe that all the crystal skulls that need to be found have been found, or there are still more out there to be discovered?
Thousands yet to come out.
Right.
And there's probably a lot of skulls that are with private owners.
Yes, I should imagine there's people out there that have these that don't sort of realise what they've got, sort of thing.
Right, or what the Mayans will tell you is when the Europeans came to the Americas, they stole everything. So they had to hide their sacred artifacts like crystal skulls. So they probably are guarding crystal skulls. Now that brings me to an interesting story.
Oh, 1 second. Hold that thought, because we need to go into a break right now. So when we come back after the break, we will literally start where we've left off. Okay, so join us right after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello? Is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Now, before the break, we were just about to enter a story regarding the 13 skulls. Joshua, hand it back to you. What was that story?
Okay, so I wanted to talk about an experience I had with a Mayan elder, okay, in Portal de Luz, because I found it very interesting. And so it's kind of linking in when we were talking about with the Mayans that they had skulls and so on. So this particular tribe of Mayans, through the book written by the British authors, I think they just called it, what do they call it, Mystery of the Crystal Skulls or something like that. I can't think of their names, but they were on the BBC with a special Everyman show or something like that. They met this elder, and the elder told them, we are protecting many crystal skulls, and we don't talk about it with people. Okay, so the reason I'm saying this is because, they know about crystal skulls. They recognize energy. So anyway, I was living in Holland, and this Mayan elder came. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to embarrass him. And he was involved in sharing about, the Mayan prophecy in 2012 was coming, December 21st, 2012. So I brought Portal de Luz with me to share with the Mayan elder. And so, and this is strange for us in the U.S., in this movie theater, they had like a lunchroom or something, where people could sit and talk and so on. So I brought out Portal de Luz, and I heard him say to me, now, when the Mayan elder sees me, you just let him do whatever he's going to do. Don't go up to him and say, grandfather, to honor him. I happen to have a crystal skull, and I know that you're involved with it. No, you just leave me on the table and just let him come up and do whatever he's going to do. So that's what I did. So then eventually saw the crystal skull, and of course my Spanish isn't that good. So one of the Dutch ladies there that was helping him, she translated my English into Spanish and his Spanish into English. And thank God that English is the common language in Europe, otherwise I would be lost. So the Mayan priest is saying, now, Portal de Luz is made by Brazingar. That's one of our crystal skulls. You need to give it back to us.
Oh.
Oh, dear.
Now, that's a great compliment for Portal de Luz, by the way. So I said, no, I'm sorry, grandfather, you are mistaken. This was made by a modern carver. I've met him, and I know that it's not one of your skulls. No, you don't understand. This is one of our skulls. Now, why would he say that? He would say that because being that they had their own crystal skulls, he would know the frequencies of energy. And so apparently Portal, having been taken to crop circles by that time, maybe Stonehenge, being in the presence of ancient skulls, had a really strong energy around him. And so the Mayan elder thought, this can't be a new skull. This has got to be one of ours. So I had to show him, and I didn't want to embarrass him, I had to show him another skull I had by the same carver, and then he was quiet. So I guess Portal was trying to educate him that the newer skulls could actually hold sacred energies, okay, because he was going based on the energy of that. So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting experience to share based upon what we have been talking about, that the Mayans had a prophecy and there were these original skulls, and they may have had a set of 13 that they worked with, and that they're guarding, other skulls because they're not all coming out yet.
Do you think some of the consciousnesses of these ancient 13 skulls are yet to be carved, that they're waiting for the right crystal and the right carver to then step into, rather than actually existing now, if that makes sense?
Yes, I understand your question. No, first of all, I think that they're probably in another dimension right now waiting, and eventually they could just appear out of nowhere like an airport when it's their time to come back to the earth and to have the right. I would think that they need a group of people. Generally with the ancient skulls, there's one person who's sharing it and doing things with it. I think it has to be a group of people. Now, that is not to preclude your comment, because I've seen this with Portal de Luz, where whatever is the consciousness I'm communicating with, he will step aside and he calls them his older brothers and sisters, and he could allow the consciousness working through the Mitchell Hedges skull or me or whatever other skull to come through to work through him, because I think they're all energetically connected. Like when I first received Portal de Luz as a gift at a Crystal Soul conference in Sedona, Arizona in 1999, I slept with him next to my head, and when I woke up, I had in my mind's eye that in the sky, and I don't know why I see it in the sky, is an etheric energy grid, and every crystal skull that is awakened has a position on that grid that it takes. So I don't know if that's how they're interconnected or not, or if that was just pictorial, a representation of what he was talking about. So it is possible that these original 13, as we're calling them, could walk in to one of the existing skulls, but I do not believe that any of them will ever be carved. They already exist, and they will just manifest when it's the right time in our reality. So maybe what's happening is our vibrational frequency is getting higher and higher, and eventually it'll get to a point where they can lower their frequency, and then they'll be present. Because I think that they were in the physical reality, like in Atlantis. And when everything fell apart, they just disappeared into another dimension and are just waiting until we're ready for them. Anyway, that's my theory.
Very interesting.
Now, I have a reason for that theory, because I have this connection with this blue skull I mentioned, but you have to ask me a question about it. So you're going to ask me a question?
When you say you've got this connection with this blue skull, do you know which crystal it is?
It's the blue skull.
Apart from it just being blue?
Well...
You've got any other information about that at all?
Yeah, I have all the information about it.
Tell me.
Okay.
Oh, he likes to tease you, Kerry.
I know, he's teasing me.
Okay, well, first of all, I could just say, well, I've written a book about the blue skull. You could just get the book and you'll know everything about it, but I won't do that. I'm hoping that if I tell you some things, then you'll want to get the book.
Yeah, right.
Which is really a strange thing, because it's like I have this telepathic communication. I see it. It's always around me in my mind's eye. And it said, you have to write about your experiences looking for me in Peru. So I said, okay, so I'll write the book. And so I put it out. So I have a book about a skull I've never met in the physical in this lifetime. Probably in other lifetimes I have, but none in this lifetime. Okay, so how this one comes up is an ex-wife who is Brazilian is taking like 50 Brazilians and me, one American, so she has to speak Spanish, Portuguese, and English, to Peru for a spiritual tour. And when we're in Lima, there is this archaeologist that I met through a mutual friend who knew I was involved in crystal skulls. And while I'm minding my own business, eating my breakfast as we're getting ready to fly to Cusco, so we can see the amazing ancient stone sites by Cusco and then go to Machu Picchu, he just stands up and points at me, says in Spanish, Joshua knows where there's a crystal skull in Peru. And I go, do I? I mean, I've been to Peru several times and I've not seen anything with crystal skulls. So I just, think about it, and then I get a vision. And the vision is my body's pulled to the northern part of Peru where I've never been before. And I see a procession of Indian-looking people going through a jungle area, and there are jungle areas in the northern part of Peru. And he has the priest is leading them, or the shaman is leading them, and his hands are outstretched from his body, and he's holding an object in front of him. So I laugh to myself and I say, well, if I know there's a crystal skull in Peru, then it's probably this guy's holding it. And wouldn't it be funny if it was my favorite color, sky blue? Now, sky blue is a whitish blue. It's what you see in the sky, basically. And so that was the end of the vision. But that didn't leave me. And this is probably happening, I would say, the early 1990s. And then I don't know exactly when, but then I started to see the blue skull like I'm looking at it right now. It appears in front of me at about a 45-degree angle on my left side, high up over my head. So that's just where I see it. And so in 1997, I'm working for as a computer person. We call it a cell phone company. You would say a mobile phone. Mobile phone company. And I have to go to Peru. It's an obsession. I have to go find this skull. And if I only take 2 weeks, it won't be enough. So I have to quit my job. I actually did a presentation for the employees, which they enjoyed on Peru, because it had all these slides. And so, but the problem is my body's being pulled to the northern part of Peru, but I've never been there, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I'm going to end up. Now, I had a friend who we've worked with his group. They're a spiritual tour company in Lima. And I said, if there was a crystal skull in Peru, which places do you think it would be in? And so he gave me a list of ancient sites, pre-Inca, in the northern part of Peru. So that's how the journey starts. And then I'm traveling with the ex-wife who's acting as my guide, but then she has to leave, and we get to some city, which I can't remember the name, in the northern part of Peru on the coast. And I get another guide. And let's see, what happened? Why do we go there? Oh, yeah, that's right. So in a place called Sipan, which has the ruins of an ancient city of the Mochica, and in the ancient city is the Lord of Sipan, so he must have been a famous ruler. They said around the time of Christ he lived. Well, when I'm there, his spirit shows up around me, and I feel like he's my protector. And the ex-wife was clairvoyant. She could see him next to me. And then I went to see the archaeologist, the main archaeologist of that city, and I show him on the map, my hand magnetically is pulled here, but I have no idea what is this place. And he says, oh, there's a city called Huancabamba high up in the Andes Mountains near the border with Ecuador. That's where I think you're supposed to go. So I work with this other guide, and we go from this coastal city, and we take a bus. We go up high into the mountains. Like 14,000, 15,000 feet high. It's kind of a little bit worrisome when we get into the mountains because it's a single lane going up and down. And I'm looking over the edge and I'm going, I hope we don't have any accident because that's a long way down. But anyway, we make it to Huancabamba. And the city that we stayed at before, we were at a youth hostel, and the owner knew the main shaman of Huancabamba. So, as we've been talking, different indigenous people, tribes, shamans, they seem to know about these crystal skulls. So I think, okay, this is great. I'm going to meet the main shaman of Huancabamba, and I'm going to ask him where the skull is. He's going to tell me, and everything's going to be happily ever after. Because I spent a lot of money to do this, and I'm going on faith and, this mad compulsion. So anyway, as soon as we get to the city, we go to his house, and he says, come back the next day. And I have a Native American friend who told me what gifts to give the shaman and for his granddaughter and everything, so I give gifts. So then we sit down. His son is there, and his grandson is there with us. So first they start telling us about, what is the spiritual work they do, how they work with the plants, and that there are these sacred lagoons in the area. They take people for healing and all of that. And I'm sitting patiently listening, and then the shaman asked me, he says, what was the most special place you ever went to in Peru? And I told him about, I can't remember the name of it. It's north of Cusco. I can't remember. It has 9, it's high up in the mountains, and it has 9 pillars in a center, and there's a lot of galactic communication that goes on there. So that was one of my places. And a UFO cloud appeared while I was by those stones and was talking to me. So I told him about that, and then it was my turn to talk. And I said, okay, this is it. I hope that this is the person I've been guided to that's going to help me to find where I have to go to see the blue skull. So before I share with you what happened, there are 3 hosts here. You take a guess what was said to me when I asked them about this, and I showed them pictures of crystal skulls. Anyone?
No idea.
No idea? Okay.
Someone has a guess.
Anyone?
I think he denied it.
He denied it, okay. And do we have a last guess?
No, I can't really think of anything, actually.
Okay, well, the answer was, these are beautiful, but we have no idea what they are. No information about What? Are you telling me I've come all this way I didn't say that, I'm thinking this. I've come all this way to meet this shaman. The spirit has guided me, and I have the Lord of Sipan, this powerful man, this being guarding me, and now I don't know what else to do, and this is it? Well, then the grandson says, well, by the way, we're going to one of the sacred lagoons tomorrow, and if you want to see how we do our healing and so on, you're very welcome to come with us. So I think, okay, well, I don't have anything else to do. I might as well go. Then we go back into the town, and I start hearing stories about this sacred lagoon. It's called Laguna Negra, or the Black Lagoon. I'm going to take people to, and I hear, oh, yeah, there's people that we've seen walk on water and flying saucers here. And I said, okay, well, it's going to be a high-energy site, so at least I have that. So the grandson says, you need to be up at 4 in the morning because it takes a long time to get there. There's no lights up there. So we have to get there early, and then we have to come back down before it gets dark. So I'm up at 4 o'clock with my guide. We're waiting outside our hotel. No grandson. 4:30, no grandson. 5 o'clock, no grandson. 6 o'clock, no grandson. I look at my guide and I say, this is the Aries thing, I think to say. Could we possibly go to this place ourselves? He says, yeah, let me check. So we go into the city. We find the car that was going to drive everyone. They want me to pay for all the people going. I'm a cheap Jew, forget that. And we find a van that acts like a bus. Now it's 9 o'clock in the morning. That will take you up into the mountains. So we do that. Of course, there's chickens under my feet, and there's people dressed in traditional Peruvian clothes. And then I befriend this family. A mother and 2 of her sons are on the bus, and so they invite us to stay with them when we get up there, because I don't know, where you go and where you stay. So that's been provided for. So let's see. I'm trying to remember if we went right away or we waited. I guess we waited. So we stayed with them for the night, and apparently where they lived, it was about a 2 to 3 hour horse ride up into the mountains to get to the sacred lagoon. So we just decided to stay with them. Now, what happens is they give me their kitchen. I mean, this is a little tiny house made out of aluminum and wood. And so I sleep in their kitchen, but I get to rest there for, because we've, this driving and everything, it makes you tired. Mm-hmm. So I'm in a sleeping bag in there, and I'm looking up in their ceiling, and all of a sudden I see in my mind's eye a hole open up, and the blue skull flies out. And then I see there's this tall man also in the room with me. This is, again, all by vision. And the blue skull is like an electric blue, and I get very excited. I can't really remember any direct communication. I just know the tall man is a guardian for the skull. And, so I'm very excited because I had this vision, so I must be in the right place. I must have been guided to the right place. And when I wake up the next morning before we go, I see the same thing happen again. And so, it's like, okay, this is it. I'm going to meet the blue skull. And so then we take the horses up. And the other thing I found very interesting is that at first, the man whose burro wasn't a horse, I thought it was a horse, was a burro, was holding the reins for me. But he saw I knew what to do, and I never really had ridden before that much. So that was kind of interesting that I was riding myself to go there. And, of course, you know, I was carrying on my back Portal de no, he wasn't with me yet. I didn't have him yet. So I had a backpack and everything. So one thing that was interesting as we were headed towards this lagoon, we came to a field of huge stones. And I could feel from their energy that those stones had nothing to do with the ground they were lying on. So my theory is that it was a stone structure that existed during the time of Lemuria, because when Lemuria sank, the Andes Mountains rose. So this part of Peru has been told to me by other shaman was a part of Lemuria. So anyway, that was interesting. And then eventually we reached the lagoon. Now what I saw is the place I was trying to find, it was a flat green area with a mountain behind it. So when I came to the lagoon, there was a flat green field in front of the lagoon and the mountain was behind the lagoon. But not only was the mountain behind, but before we left, I saw a skull face on the mountain itself. So I said, finally, I found the place I'm supposed to camp for 2 days. But then I didn't have any camping gear with me. But I didn't care. I was so excited. And I think, too, the water of this lagoon was supposed to be very healing. So the guides turned their back, and I don't remember if I went in naked or not, but I did something with the water. So we had to go all the way back down and come back up again so that we could camp out in this area. So this is where I was guided to. So if you want to know the rest of the story, it's in the book.
Definitely a good reason to buy the book, I would say. Don't you agree, guys?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, but I will say that I did have a vision of a Lemurian temple where the blue skull was in while I was doing this, and this wasn't my only visit. I visited 2 more other times. So this is how I felt the blue skull, and now it's around me, and I think eventually it will come out in the future, but it could be. And I'm not allowed to say if it's one of the 13. It always tells me I'm just the blue skull, and when I manifest, that's all you say. You don't call me an ancient skull or anything special. Mm-hmm. People just experience me and have their whatever experiences they're going to have with me. So that was how it began. Yeah, otherwise, the rest of the time of the radio show would be needed to explain all the other experiences, and you don't want to do that.
Crystal skulls seem to be very synonymous with South America, you know, as their sort of place of origin. Is there anywhere else in the world where they has a sort of ancient sort of legend of crystal skulls as such, you know, sort of around the Pacific Rim? Say, if you talk about Lemuria being important in this.
Yes, there are other places also. There was a cave near Hong Kong that this gentleman found a bunch of skulls, but these were stylized skulls. They didn't look human-like. Mm-hmm. And I think we actually have one of those. Katrina was offered one and purchased it, called Winema, which means female chief. That's very interesting. So there were, I don't know if there were like 12 or 20 of those type of skulls. I forget the number. There's other people I've met who've had those skulls. So I think out of the Orient and Nepal too, crystal skulls have shown up. Now another thing that's interesting, although I don't know if they found any skulls, carvers are making skulls in India now. And I haven't been able to get a good reason why they're doing that, unless it's just for, to sell it for the money. But
quite possibly. But that does tend to seem to be a cultural trait. No disrespect to the Indians.
Right. Now, there was another skull that came out of Love, Russia, which I think may be what used to be Poland, and then after the Second World War, it became part of Russia. I'm trying to think which one was that. The Scythians, which was an ancient race, apparently were connected with this large rose quartz skull that got found in that area. So I think, and then Aboriginals have talked about crystal skulls, that maybe one is in the Pacific Ocean close to there. So I think they come out of everywhere, but initially it was Mexico and Central America and some South America that they were coming out. But really I think it's a worldwide phenomenon, because I think what happened is, the skulls were honored by ancient civilizations, indigenous people, and then for their protection they were scattered all over the world. Another one called Synergy, which has been brought to England and goes to Holland a lot, is from Sherry Whitfield in America. People in Australia, when they saw the pictures of it, they said that they had that skull at one time and they had a twin. So, there's all kinds of legends of the skulls coming out from all over the world, really.
So if you were to sort of like be presented with a question like I'm about to present you, and you were asked, in your opinion, which skull is the real deal without a shadow of a doubt, what would you say?
Mitchell Hedges. But then there's many other ones I would say too, but that would be the first one. That would be the first one, because many people know it, and I'm pretty sure it came from Atlantis. I think I worked with it there.
Because that actually has a different trait to a lot of crystal skulls, doesn't it? Because it's actually got a detached jaw, isn't it?
Yes, it does.
And is this common in other skulls you've come across?
There are not too many with detached jaws for the older ones, but I believe that more will be found. My co-author, Mr. Nasserino, who has passed away, claims during the Second World War, when he was fighting there, that he saw a rose quartz skull that had a movable jaw that was kept by a certain group of people, secret group of people. The modern carvers today, we have a rose quartz skull that has a movable jaw that's very special, which is based on the measurements of the Mitchell Hedges skull. So the modern carvers can make these kind of skulls now with diamond tip tools.
Right, you mentioned Nick Nosserina, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
He was quite integral with Max, wasn't he?
Yes, he had special relationship with the guardian of Max, and they would work together when he was alive. Joined Parks.
And have you met Max?
Yes, I have. Because I would say Max is an
seems
agent.
to be the most accessible, doesn't he, of all the skulls, the famous skulls?
Well, maybe there was a time, but Bill Holman is traveling all over the place with the Mitchell Hedges skull. I keep hearing about different places he goes. So I think that one is probably more accessible than Max now.
I see. But when you look at... Do you not think sometimes that when you look at the story that comes with them, that it seems very marketing, it seems very money-driven? And do you think the skull, for all its spirituality and its knowledge, would not necessarily wish to be used that way? Or is that a good way for it to get its message out?
Well, this is the challenge that all spiritual-based people have in doing their work. On the one hand, we want to freely offer our services. Like I do personal consultation through Skype with people. And because all of a sudden the universe likes us and we're finally not hurting so much for money, I just do it by donation and I let people decide. But, if I think back to the things that I've done, there'd probably be some people who said that I was too commercial because, there'd be certain things I would give away for free, like the free ebook we have, or people would write and ask me questions, and I wouldn't charge them to do that because that's stupid. You're here to offer information. But, I have books I sell. We've sold crystal skulls. We can't give everything away for free. I think in the future, money's not going to be so important, so this question won't mean something. So I think what you have to do is, when you're dealing with a spiritual person who's charging for products or services, you have to go into the energy of who the person is and see, like I hope your listeners can hear how dedicated I am to the study of this, and
Oh gosh, yeah.
How important. And also look at the price they charge, because we always tried to charge a reasonable price, like,
Mm-hmm.
a 3-hour lecture, $25. That's a reasonable price.
Gosh.
Workshop, maybe $60 or $70.
Oh, just saying,
but
everybody, if you want to hire me, I'm a lot more than that. You need to put your
Exactly.
prices up, Joshua.
Well, that's what I'm told. But, you don't want the money to be the reason that a person can't come, or maybe they can do a barter exchange with you or something. But there should be some energy exchange.
No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the big thing that's happening with crystal skulls is so many are being sold now.
Yeah.
And some of them being sold as, this is a very ancient one. You need to pay us thousands of dollars, and it's probably a modern made one.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no matter, in every subject, in the paranormal, in UFOs, in spirituality, you're going to have people who are totally coming from heart, totally serious, want to share, be of service, and you're going to have people who are going to be doing it for money. So you have to use your discernment.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you work with? We could not continue our work if we didn't charge to receive something. It would be impossible. And thank God for my father, who unfortunately passed away last year. And sometimes he had to help us out because we were really struggling at certain points. Even now, I do all these radio shows. Very few people have ordered books. A few crystal skulls get sold. So it's not something we say in America to write home about. We're doing great, but, so there's a balance in everything. It's the same thing between masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. You have masculine and feminine. There has to be a balance between those two. So the way I work is I wait for the inspiration, which is the feminine, and then the masculine tries to figure out, the Blue Skull says, I want you to do a book now about all of your travels with me and everything. Are you joking? Do you know how long that's going to take? Yeah, it's necessary, really. You should go ahead and do it. So you have to have that balance between the two things. If you're working with the skulls and you're listening to what they say, that's the feminine. And then the logical will say, nope, I'm not going to do that. You're asking too much now. I'm sorry. I have a life to live or whatever. So it's just about balance. And so, in UFOs, it's going to be the same. In paranormal, it's going to be the same. All of it. That's why I'm looking forward to our future where the money won't be so important anymore.
What do you feel is the predominant trait in skulls? Is it masculine or feminine, or is it both?
Well, some will definitely be masculine. Portal de Luz for me is completely masculine, but I've had people work with that skull and say it's feminine. So, it's probably because the consciousness is both that works through the skull. Some of them have both. King Leilani, which is a star being skull, so I have to do a little commercial thing. I'm working with a carver in China to try to get this line of skulls going. People like them at a reasonable price, remember. It has two names. King, the one who points the way, was the first name that came to me, which is masculine, and Leilani is a feminine name, which represent the feminine aspect of the skull. So it has both energies. So there's no set rule with it.
Right.
What do you make of the other kind of skull carvings that are out there? Because there's dragon skulls, and I've actually seen some absolutely phenomenal T-Rex dragon skulls coming through now. Those sort of skulls. What do you make of those, or have you not worked with those? Is it just purely the human style skull?
Well, I have seen, and I don't know. I think we have one dragon skull. I think Katrina has one dragon skull. What I'm finding is everybody is drawn and has a different affinity for different shapes and different gemstones for skulls. So we can't, so I can't say, well, this is better or worse than another. I'll give you an example. In the first conference I was involved in with crystal skulls in Holland, which I think was 2000, I can't remember, let's see, I think it was 2005 or 6. somebody brought to the conference jade skulls, very old jade skulls, and a jade skeleton, okay, which purportedly came out of Mongolia, and somehow Genghis Khan, while conquering all these cultures, a culture he conquered had these pieces. And there's very strange symbols carved into the jade skulls, which I don't recognize. So I had a chance to sleep with some of these skulls. And the first night I couldn't sleep at all. The energy was just too intense. Then after I talked to them, the second night I was okay. But at the conference in Holland, when we brought the crystal skulls with the jade skulls, even though the jade skulls had a very good energy, their energies did not match. They wouldn't work together well, is what I felt. It was like when I was in the room with both of them, it was confusing. You know, it was it wasn't working. So there's all different kinds of energies that a skull can have, you know, and it's just what you resonate with, basically.
No, but that kind of makes sense with crystals in general, doesn't it? Because you can put two crystals together and they'll meld their energies beautifully and create that different resonance, where you put another two and they won't.
Exactly.
You know? So yeah, I can understand that totally.
And the same thing happens. We call our 30+ skulls the crystal kids. A new one shows up to join them, and in the beginning, it's going to take a period of time for an integration process to go on. You know, even though the kids will say, "Oh, a new brother, a new sister, we love it. Welcome, welcome, welcome." But it takes a period of time for an integration to go on. And then, you know, you sit with all of them, and it's like, yeah, this is a very harmonious, peaceful energy between all these skulls. It's because they've all worked together to do that, to come up with a collective energy that's going to benefit the people who see them or sit with them.
They are just like people, though, aren't they? You know, and I've been talking about this recently with the people that I work with, and I can't reiterate enough how you have to see them like people. Some people are going to get on with each other, and some people aren't going to get on with each other. Sometimes you need a warming period to a person. It is very much like that, isn't it? And everybody brings something different to the table that's just as important. And you have to learn to listen. How did you first... I mean, I know you talked about your first experience, but when you find a new skull, what's your process of working with that skull to connect?
Okay. Before I answer that question, we haven't talked about the 3 free ebooks I wanted to give out to people, or our website. Could we do that first, and then I'll go into your
go ahead. Absolutely.
Go for it.
Okay, so for all the radio shows that I've been doing here in 2020, I'm offering 3 free ebooks. The only way that I have to share these free ebooks with people is you need to send me an email and just say, "Oh, I heard you on this radio show. Could you send me, you know, the 3 ebooks?" And I attach them to an email. So the email address for the 3 ebooks is crystalskullexplorers@gmail.com. Okay, or maybe you'll have that email up whenever you put the show up so people can see it too. crystalskullexplorers@gmail.com. I will send you our free Crystal Skull ebook, only 100 pages. I don't know anybody who gives 100 pages away for free. Then we have a book I did based on a couple of years ago, where I was watching all these amazing YouTubes, that we may be in a computer simulation. So I give you the links to all the information that I found, and I believe that that's probably true. And it links also to the large stone door called Amaru Maru, which is near Lake Titicaca in Peru, which when Katrina and I did our one and only tour group, we took the people there. And purportedly that's a door for the people who created this universe to walk through. So it talks about that. And also in the Blue Skull book, I talk about Amaru Maru too, because it's about Peru. So those are 2 places. And then the last book I had to do and created before I went on Coast to Coast. And it was when I was in Brazil in 1996 or 1997, I received a message from my future self, who I call Argus. And this is not a future lifetime. This is this lifetime in 2037 or 2040. For whatever reason, the frequency in Brazil is very high, and this information came through. When I read it, I sometimes I go, I wrote that? Where did that come from? I can't remember doing it. But what it shows is what life will be like, within the next 20 years or so. And like you were saying, Kerry, it's hard to believe all these changes are going on right now and how fast it is. But Argus says we have total peace by then. Galactics are walking amongst us. Now, the support for what Argus said, I was looking for it, comes through Project Looking Glass, which I don't know how many people are familiar with that. But apparently, and this is through a gentleman, let's see, what is her name? Kerry Cassidy interviewed Mr. Wood on her show, which talks about all kinds of conspiracy and things. Very interesting, the people she brings on her show. So it's always on YouTube. So Mr. Wood said that Project Looking Glass was created from parts from the Stargates that they have, which probably were given to us by the Galactics. And, of course, in the Stargates, you can travel in space and time. You just have to have another Stargate that you link into somewhere. But anyway, he said that what they were doing with Project Looking Glass is they would have strategies and things they wanted to create, and somehow it would link into those ideas and project potential futures of what would happen, so they could select the best thing that would work for them. But right now, these devices are forbidden to be used because I think Mr. Wood said from around December 21st, 2012, they will only show one future now, and it doesn't matter, what scenario you try to propose. And the people who have these devices, which is probably people who have been working for the control of our planet, don't want anyone to see what it's showing, which is the positive future. So Project Looking Glass is only showing a positive future. So those are the 3 free ebooks. If you want to go to our website, and I know it's complicated, but we're working on a new one, but just bear with us on this one. CSE.crystalskullexplorers.com. CSE.crystalskullexplorers.com. Eventually, it'll just be crystalskullexplorers.com. But it's going to take us a while to create the new website, which my designers tell me are for millennials. So if you're a millennial, you're going to love the design of the new website.
Well, I'll be putting links to that up on the Facebook page when the show goes out. So don't worry about that.
Okay, and the last thing I had to share is I have a group in Canada that has the largest collection of crystal skulls you can imagine. For all listeners of this show, I've gotten you a 10% discount if you want to get your own crystal skull or see what's available. Again, when I send out the email with the 3 ebooks, I'll give you the link and a coupon code to get that 10%.
Oh, great. Bargain. Yeah. Kerry, I'll have the money back for that skull every week.
Sorry, no returns.
Okay, so now we can go to Kerry's question. So you were asking me, how do I work with crystal skulls? How do I bring them to life, activate them? Was that the question?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just use Portal de Luz as an example then. So when I got Portal de Luz, I didn't know what to do with him in the beginning, and that's serious. So what I did is I just slept with him, and then I had, some insights that came to me. I started to do a lot of meditations with him. Now, this was not easy because he's 10 pounds. So because I wanted to put him on my body at different places, so I was able to do that kind of. But for the most part, I just had to kind of put him on a table and hold him and meditate. Again, for me, meditating with a crystal skull and music that rocks for you and vibrates for you and resonates for you, I think is really powerful. So I was also doing that. And then the next thing is the skull may say, and he calls me Dad. He says, Dad, we should go to this place. I would like to experience that energy. So that was how, when I was in England, I went to crop circles with him. And actually, there was one crop circle near Avebury, and I had a crop circle researcher with me who could measure the electromagnetic frequency that we changed the energy of the center of the crop circle after I meditated with Portal and put him in the center. So that just shows what can happen with meditation. And what happens is, as you're having your interaction with the crystal skull, you will, through whichever spiritual gift you have, you will develop a communication, and eventually there'll come a point where you won't need to talk to Katrina or I anymore or ask us questions. You'll just know intuitively, or you'll just have that knowingness how to work with the skull automatically. You could just create that relationship. So you have to just trust in the process. Now, it is possible you could get a skull and nothing happens in the beginning for a period of time. And so it could just be the skull's waiting for you to go through certain experiences or change your frequency until it's ready to work with you when you get to that point too. Also, take the skull to places with special energy like I did. If an ancient crystal skull or a strong energy skull comes around, share it with your skull. So the idea is you're exposing it to many different frequencies of energy, and just by having contact with it over time, you're creating a relationship, and then you just know what to do. So that was the process that worked for me and that we recommend for other people. It doesn't have to be complicated. There isn't one way to activate a crystal skull. There's your way to bring it to life, basically.
So with all this time travel thing, with all this time travel thing going on, is this going to be something that is going to be in our lifetime, and we would be able to travel interdimensionally?
Well, I would say once we have direct contact with the galactics, and we're no longer playing this game that they don't exist. Although I think there's too many whistleblowers talking about working on black projects now, and I saw the Pentagon just released a UFO that they captured, but of course somebody said it was a drone that they were doing. Once we have access to them and working with them, and actually it's our destiny to rejoin the like a galactic federation of planets, then we will have available all these technologies. So we will be able to travel to other planets. We will have the ability to do time travel and the whole thing. Now, one thing about time travel, though, which is, I guess, an inspired message and understanding that came to me, is how, let's say you go back in the past and you kill your grandfather. I'm not saying you would do that, but just as an example.
Yeah.
How could you possibly be born if your grandfather's dead? Well, I believe that we have parallel Earths. Like there was a TV show which I've been watching again. I really love that show called Sliders.
I love that. That was brilliant.
Right, where they're going from one dimensional of Earth to another, and in one dimension the United States is run by the British, and another it's the Russians, and then it's the Spanish, and so on. So what would happen is a new timeline would get set up where you can't come back to the original one if you killed your grandfather, and you would have to stay in that timeline. So that to me is how it's preserved. And so there could be infinite Earths, other us's making total different choices, but it's still an aspect of our multi-dimensional being.
But wouldn't that be just a paradox in itself? Because if, say, for example, I went back in time to kill my grandfather, you'd have to keep that continual loop going. So if my grandfather died, I wouldn't be born to be able to go back in time to kill him anyway, so it just reverts back to the normal timeline.
No, what would happen is a new timeline would be started at that point, and you would have to stay there, and that would preserve it from a paradox.
Okay.
So that's what came to me. Now, one time I asked a question inwardly, so I don't know if this was Creator answering or not, but I said, Creator is infinite mind, and Creator can imagine every conceivable possibility that there is. What does Creator benefit from each of us? We're just this, human being on the earth, this, some might say, not very significant planet, although we have a lot going on here right now. So what difference does it make, for a Creator, for us? And the answer came back, your experiences. So in other words, Creator receives through each of us our experiences. So therefore, this also makes sense too from the multi parallel Earth theory, the Creator is experiencing through each of our parallel selves a different aspect or different decisions that we're making, that experience of it. Because, it's a unique experience. It won't happen again unless Creator decides, to go through the process of creation and let everything start over again, which I think could possibly happen as well. The Matrix movie kind of showed that, where, they would destroy this Earth city and then they would build it up again and they would go through the process again.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and I don't know if this is true or not, but, there's several people making YouTube videos or being interviewed that claim that in like 2028, time travel is then available for everyone, and that they're coming back in time and revisiting us and leaving messages and so on.
It's only 8 years, Joshua.
Yeah, that's right.
We've still got 2 years of wearing masks and arguing with each other to go yet before we even think about anything else, surely.
Well, that's what the fake news wants you to believe. That's not what's going to be happening. I don't mean to make people upset, because like I did that post with the sign and my sister came on and she said, oh no, the masks are very important. And I've talked to people and we all need to do it. And it's like, when I go out, I'm sending out my energy. Where is this virus? I don't hardly feel nothing coming from it. I think that when it came out in China, there were a lot of people who were affected, but it mutated. And, I just don't think it's going to be a big deal for much longer. Once Trump's president, things will change. Gets reelected, things are going to change. I just see a totally positive future.
Okay, so when is... Right, okay, let's talk about this conspiracy theory, because it is very prevalent in everywhere you read. It's been going on. You've got two pools of people. You've got the believers in the virus who think, yeah, it's a really bad thing. A lot of people are dying from it. It's really, we've got to be careful. And then you've got the other people who go, it's not real. It's just a cover story. But everything's getting tied into that. It's getting confusing for people.
Well, I'll give you the answer that I've come to believe. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm just an individual. I do not have secret sources. All I'm doing is I'm just going on YouTube and I'm watching videos, and I'm in some groups on Facebook and I'm talking to people. And there's something I did yesterday that's connected to this, which I'm told I'm not allowed to talk about, but it could change the future about it. So this is what I think has been happening. I think we've been under control for a long time, and there's a group of people for 20 years at least, and you can call them whatever you want, who have just said enough is enough. We're not going to allow children to be abused. We're not going to be slaves to this debt system. We're not going to allow the wealthy people to totally control everything, because it was very obvious to me when the pandemic came out that this was all about control. And, I was expecting these people who do this, they were going to do something very significant, to a last-ditch effort almost, to try to get this going. So I believe that they've already lost, that this group that has had this plan for 20 years, they're arresting the people who have done this. And once Trump gets reelected, what they're saying is they're going to put on television for all to see these trials, and they will eventually put into place a new system for the finances, which they're calling in the U.S. Nasara and globally Jisara. I've read the document on it. All the major currencies will be backed by gold, and they're going to, through this process, and according to one video I saw, again, I can't confirm this, Clinton actually signed this, but they've never allowed it to be put, into place, that people no longer will have problems with finances and money. Now, this sounds very fantastic and incredible, but the reason I believe this is when I lived in Las Vegas in 1991, a van struck me from behind, and I was in a coma for 3 days. And I just always feel I was protected, so I didn't even look when I heard the loud screech behind me. I just saw my vision go from white to black. And when I woke up 2 days later, I was strapped in a hospital bed, and the doctor said, "Do you remember the truck that hit you?" And I go, "What is he talking about? I have no idea what he's talking about." And I passed out, and I came back a day later. Now, I have a memory during that 3 days that I was in coma, what was happening to me. And I don't know if the people saw not the first Star Wars movie that physically came out, but the first in the series, where Princess Amidala goes to Trantor and talks to this big council of representatives from all over the universe. I remember being at a meeting like that. And the reason I sense that I was at that meeting is, number one, before I was born, I volunteered. And secondly, they needed to have people from the earth because they were talking about how do we help humanity to have peace on this planet. We have to come up with a plan where if we show up, galactic show up, we're not going to cause panic and fear. So I was there to give feedback on the plan that they were showing. Now, the problem is that when I came back, I have a memory that there was like this door in front of me with black on the other side, and I knew if I went through that door, I would come back to Earth. And there were all these amazing things that I learned when I was at this meeting. And there was a man at the door, and I was begging him, please don't blank my memory. I need to come back and tell everyone what I just saw. And he says, I'm sorry, you can't. But as events start to happen, you will know what is true and what is not true. So I will tell you from that experience with absolute certainty that the number of people that they're saying are having the disease or are dying is absolutely, completely false. There are people who are getting sick. I'm not denying that, but it's not the number. In other words, we've had other illnesses where far more people got sick and died, and they didn't call a pandemic. And now all of a sudden they have to have this pandemic for this fear. So I just believe absolutely from that experience that there is a group of people working behind the scenes. There's a war going on that we're not hearing about in the major media. And the side for control has already lost. It's just a question of time. And they have to do this gradually because the things that I'm reading about, too many people wouldn't believe it. They would be shocked. Individuals involved, famous people involved in some of the things going on that are horrific, they would be shocked. They couldn't believe it. So it has to be given out gradually. The other last thing, and again, I can't confirm this, but several people have said there is a new financial system called QFS, Quantum Financial System. As of September 1st, it has taken over for SWIFT, which means the bankers and the people who have all the money, they can't steal it anymore if that's true. That would be a big difference. So I don't know if any of that makes sense or not, but that's just my personal feeling about it. And the one last thing, a message from Barbara Marciniak that I heard another gentleman repeat, which I agree with totally about what's going on. Don't listen to the media. Go day by day, be very positive, and that's the energy that's needed right now. Do not give your power away or empower the fear. Just take it day by day, be an observer. That was the term they used. Just be an observer. We have to go through this process. This is the rising of the phoenix. Out of the ashes, an amazing new world is coming. And that's what my future self is talking about. That's what they're seeing in Project Looking Glass, and many people are seeing it. So that's what I believe is happening right now. But it's up to each person to decide for themselves if they're going to follow this or not, if they believe it or not. You know, some people, you can't talk out of it. They'll get very angry with you if you say, oh, you don't need the mask. It's not really going to help you. It's going to harm your immune system, according to certain doctors. You know, and and the other thing that's very clear, anything to do that disrupts this scenario, they're taking it off of YouTube and Twitter. So why are they doing that? They should allow people to decide for themselves what scenario makes the most sense for them.
On that note, we've actually come to the end of the show on that little bombshell. So thank you so much for joining us, Joshua. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm always happy to talk with you guys. So if you want to do it again, just let me know.
Oh, definitely. I certainly will.
Definitely, yeah.
Don't forget, you can check Joshua out at cse.crystalskullexplorers.com. Go over to the Paranormal Concept Facebook page over on Twitter, Instagram or Facebook and you'll find all of the details there as well. And you'll be able to get a link to the ebooks too, which is awesome. On that note, say good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.